One thing we have to talk about when we're looking at measurements is how accurate can we be, or how precise are our measurements. And so that tells us how many significant figures that we can use. An exact number is something that you have defined. So if you count your fingers or your toes, or if you say this is equal to this, that's called an equality, then those are exact numbers. An inexact number, though, is something that you measure. So instead of saying 1 meter is 100 centimeters, you take a ruler and you say, okay, that is 5.35 centimeters, okay? And so there's some uncertainty in those measurements, usually that very last digit. So significant figures are all the digits in the measured number, including the last one, which is estimated. Okay, so when we're talking about what is significant and what is not, if it's a non-zero number, it's always significant. So if it's 1 through 9, it is going to be significant. So in these numbers, 65.2 has 3 significant figures. 255.345, since all of those are numbers, has 6 significant figures. Where it gets a little crazy is when you have zeros. Okay, a zero counts as a significant figure if it's between two numbers that are not zero, or if it comes at the end of a number that has a decimal place. Okay, let me say it again. The zero is significant if it's between two numbers that aren't zero, like 9 and 5, or if it comes at the end of a number that has a decimal place in it, like 3.7500. Also, even if I don't have anything past that, if I write that decimal place right there, that means that zero is significant. So 620 decimal would have 3 significant figures. If I didn't write that decimal there, it would only have 2 significant figures. A zero does not count as significant if it's at the beginning of a number. So we call this a placeholder, okay? Or if it's at the end of a number that does not have a decimal, okay? At the end of a number that does not have a decimal. Since there's no decimal in there, it doesn't have 4 significant figures. It only has 3. This one, however, these are just placeholders. That's just telling me how small that number is. It's not telling me how accurate that number is. So those 2 zeros are not significant. They're just telling me that the 245 is not 245 or 0.245. It's 0.00245. So when you look at it, let's do a few of these. If you have, you're going to look at what your measurement is, okay? You're not necessarily going to look at conversions. Conversions, you're just going to assume that they have an infinite number. So 12 inches equals 1 foot. You don't worry about how many significant figures those have because they're a definition, okay? 351.2 miles has 4 significant figures, and 5.5 hours has 2 significant figures. So when I put that in my calculator, I'm going to get this big long number right here. All right, what I have to figure out is the one with the least number of significant figures. That's as accurate as I can be. So since I only had 2 significant figures in this number, even though I had 4 in the other, I can only have 2 significant figures in my answer. So what would my answer be? 64. Okay, because I have to round up. If it's 5 or higher, I round up. If it's less than 5, I round down. Okay. And so 64 miles per hour is my answer. Two significant figures. All right, so does that make sense? So if I've got 61, and we're going to look at these, if I need to round it to two places, okay, 61.2537, then I'm going to use the 2, and it's going to round to 61. 61 to 3 places, 61.2537, rounding to 3 places, I use the 4th one, which tells me I need to go 61.3. 4 places, I'm going to use the 3rd one, okay, the 5th one, to round that 4th one up. And if I'm doing 5 places, I'm going to use the 6th digit to round that one up to 2.54. Okay, so when you're rounding, okay, you're going to round to the one that you're not dropping, okay? Now, in multiplying and dividing, you're going to use the least number of significant figures. If you add or subtract, you're going to use the lowest number of decimal places, okay? So when you add or subtract, you're going to use the lowest number of decimal places to figure out what your sig figs are, your significant figures are. So if you have 10.11, which has 2 decimal places, minus 3.6, which has 1 decimal place, then your answer can what? Only have 1 decimal place. All right, so we get 6.51 when we put that in the calculator. And so since it can only have 1 decimal place, the actual number, the actual answer that's correct is 6.5.